The galaxy was wide and endless, with stars burning in the dark sky and ships moving between worlds. And among all the strange stories that spread through alien halls, there was one tale that always returned: the tale of humans. The species that came from the blue planet they called Earth. The species that looked fragile and soft, but somehow kept surviving. The species that confused the galaxy with their strange ways. The aliens spoke of humans in whispers. Some said humans had strange minds. Some said they had strange hearts. But the strangest rumor of all was about their food, for many believed that humans never ate meat, that they lived only on plants and roots, that they were harmless eaters of green leaves and sweet fruits. And this idea filled many alien crews with both amusement and disbelief. For how could a predator species that had conquered the stars survive without flesh? In one corner of a busy space station, two young alien cadets argued, their voices sharp yet playful. One said humans were fragile creatures that could not harm anyone. They were weak because they ate no meat. They only survived by hiding behind machines and numbers. The other cadet shook his head and whispered that humans were dangerous because they kept secrets. Maybe they did not eat meat like the other hunters of the stars. But maybe they did something even stranger, something no one had ever seen. The commander of the station overheard them, his eyes shining with pride as he corrected their thoughts. He told them that humans were indeed harmless eaters, that their teeth were dull, that their claws were soft, that their bodies were weak, and that they did not need meat to live. He laughed loudly, and the cadets laughed with him. Yet still a shadow of curiosity stayed in their minds, because deep inside they wondered if the commander truly knew the truth, or if he too was only guessing like the rest. Across the station in the common hall, groups of aliens gathered and told stories of the strange visitors from Earth. Some said that humans were like living trees walking around, their blood filled with green things and their stomachs full of leaves. Others swore they saw humans carrying strange boxes of metal that they never opened, boxes they held close like treasures, boxes that might hold food or tools or maybe even weapons. And every time someone mentioned the box, the room grew quieter, because no alien had ever seen what was inside. The rumor spread further, reaching the repair docks and the cargo bay. Workers repeated the story while lifting heavy containers. Guards repeated it while checking their patrol routes. Even the younglings repeated it in their games, pretending to be humans who never ate meat, who lived on sunlight and water like the flowers on their homeworlds. But every time the story was told, there was always one question that no one could answer. How did humans become so strong if they never touched flesh? One night in the observation dome, where the stars shone brightest, a group of aliens sat together, speaking softly as the dark void stretched before them. One of them asked, if humans truly did not eat meat, then what made them so hard to kill in battle? What gave them the will to keep fighting when other species gave up? Another answered that maybe it was their strange plant diet. Maybe eating leaves gave them some secret strength. Maybe they were closer to nature than any other race. Yet even as they spoke, none of them truly believed their own words. They only tried to calm their restless thoughts. The whisper of the rumor became a wave, reaching the ears of captains and governors, and soon even the High Council of the Alien Alliance asked the question, is it true that humans never eat meat? Scholars tried to study human records. They searched old transmissions. They read fragments of Earth history. But the data was unclear. Some writings spoke of hunting, some spoke of farming, some spoke of meals with flesh, and others spoke of meals without. The truth seemed lost in the smoke of mystery, and the rumor only grew stronger. Among all these voices, there was always a sense of laughter, for the idea of a species crossing the stars without meat seemed foolish. Hunters needed flesh, predators needed blood. So the aliens called the humans soft ones, gentle eaters, leaf walkers, and prey folk. They believed the humans were no threat. They believed they could mock them without fear. And yet somewhere in the silence of the stars, the truth waited, hidden behind a simple box that a single human always carried, but never shared. On the day when one human was chosen to join an alien crew for a long voyage, the rumors followed him like shadows. The alien stared as he walked aboard with calm steps, his face unreadable, his hands carrying a small box of metal, no bigger than a soldier's helmet, polished and locked tight. He held it close to his side like a part of his body, and the aliens whispered to each other, "That must be the human lunchbox. That must be the secret." The cadets who had once argued about humans watched with wide eyes. One leaned close and whispered to the other, "Maybe inside is only green plants. Maybe it is nothing more than grass and fruit." The other shook his head and said softly, "No, there's something more, something dangerous. I can feel it." And though the commander laughed again, deep down even he felt a small stir of doubt, for he had never seen a human meal with his own eyes, only heard the whispers like everyone else. As the starship engines roared and the crew began their journey, the box remained by the human's side, silent and unopened. The aliens pretended not to stare, but their eyes always returned to it. Curiosity burned like fire in their minds. What was inside? What could explain the strength of humans? What could explain the mystery of a species that everyone called weak, but that no war had ever destroyed? The box seemed to hold more than food. It seemed to hold the answer to the rumor itself. The rumor that humans never ate meat was now more than a simple story. It was a question that carried fear and wonder. It was a riddle that no alien could solve. And as the ship cut through the endless dark, the crew felt both excitement and unease, for they did not know if the rumor was true or false. They only knew that one day the human would open the lunchbox. And when that day came, the galaxy itself might learn a truth it was not ready to hear. The alien ship was larger than any human vessel. Its hull stretched like veins of metal glowing with soft light, and inside walked the single human chosen to join the crew, his steps steady and his face calm. He carried no weapons, only a single bag slung across his shoulder and the small metal box that he kept close to his side like a secret treasure. The crew watched him with quiet fascination, their eyes following his every move. They expected him to stumble, to act strange, to show the weakness they believed was inside his kind. Yet he did not stumble. He did not hesitate. He walked with the confidence of someone who had traveled across dangers greater than the empty dark of space. And though his body looked soft compared to their armored frames, there was a hardness in his eyes that made even the strongest alien feel uneasy. At the welcome hall, the commander spoke grand words. He told the human that he was now part of their mission. He told him that his duties would be light, that his safety was assured, and the crew applauded politely. But their eyes kept slipping toward the box the human held, small and ordinary in shape, yet heavy with questions, for every rumor that had spread about humans now seemed to rest inside that box. During the first days of the voyage, the human joined them in their tasks. He worked with the engineers repairing broken panels. He assisted the pilots with navigation. He even joined the guards in their exercises. His body moved differently, not as strong or heavy, yet with a speed and balance that surprised them. Some whispered that maybe his strange diet gave him agility. Maybe his weakness was only illusion. And still the box never left his side. In the dining hall, the crew ate together, their trays filled with protein gel and synthetic meat grown from vats. They laughed and shared stories as they chewed the heavy meals, and all the while the human sat quietly with his box resting on the table. He smiled at their jokes, he nodded at their tales, but he never opened the box, never touched the food around him, never explained how he fed himself, and the whispers returned louder than before. One alien guard leaned close to another and whispered that humans were plants in disguise. They lived only on light and water. The other guard shook his head and said that no plant could move like that, no plant could fight like that. He thought the human ate something different, something too strange for them to understand. Their whispers reached the commander, who once again laughed and told them to stop worrying. But even he felt the sharp edge of curiosity each time he saw the box. One night, the crew gathered in the recreation hall, where light screens showed games and songs from different worlds. The human joined them, his laughter echoing with theirs, his voice strange yet warm. And for a moment the aliens forgot the rumor. They saw only a companion. But then as the lights dimmed, one alien swore he heard the soft click of a lock. He turned quickly and saw the human holding the box slightly open, a glow of heat escaping, a smell faint and rich drifting through the air. But before anyone else noticed, the box was closed again, and the human smile remained as calm as ever. The alien who saw it said nothing, his heart beating fast. He did not know if it was real or if his senses played tricks. But the thought stayed in his mind. He wondered if inside that box was food of a kind they had forgotten, food of a kind their ancestors once ate before they turned away from flesh and blood. He wondered if the human was hiding not weakness but power. As the voyage continued, the aliens began to treat the human differently. Some kept their distance, afraid of the unknown, while others grew closer, drawn by his laughter and his strange courage. They asked him about Earth, about the oceans and mountains, about the storms and deserts. And he answered with stories filled with life. He told them of animals with teeth like knives, of beasts that hunted in packs, of birds that soared higher than mountains. And as he spoke, their eyes widened, for they realized that the human came from a world of predators. Still, none could understand how such a world shaped a species that supposedly never ate meat. The question burned in their minds. How could a creature survive among predators if it was not a predator itself? The contradiction haunted them, and each time they thought of it, their eyes returned to the box. In the engineering bay, the young cadet who once argued about humans approached the human quietly. He asked with trembling voice, "What do you eat? How do you survive without meat?" The human only smiled and tapped the box, saying softly that survival is about more than food, it is about choice. And then he walked away, leaving the cadet speechless and confused. His answer gave no clarity, only deeper mystery. The longer the human stayed, the stronger the tension grew. The crew tried to ignore it. They tried to focus on their duties, but the box was always there. During training, it rested by the wall. During meetings, it sat by his chair. During sleep shifts, it was locked under his arm. Never opened, never shared. And soon the rumor became more than simple curiosity. It became an obsession. Some crew members began to dream of it. They dreamed of the human opening the box, and inside they saw terrible things, glowing eyes staring back, dripping flesh of unknown beasts, or even the faces of their own kind. Others dreamed of golden fruits shining with light, food that gave endless strength, food that could change everything. The box became a symbol of hope and fear both, and the crew grew restless. The commander noticed the unrest and called a meeting. He told them that the human was harmless, that the box was private, that no one should disturb him. But as he spoke, he felt the same fire of curiosity burning inside himself. He wanted to know, too. He wanted to see what the human carried. Yet his pride stopped him from asking. He could not show weakness in front of his crew. The human, meanwhile, continued as before, smiling, helping, speaking warmly, yet always guarding the box. And this balance of trust and mystery created a tension that filled every corridor of the ship. The aliens respected him, yet feared him. They liked him, yet doubted him. They laughed with him, yet whispered behind his back. And every moment stretched the suspense tighter and tighter like a rope ready to snap. And in the silence of the dark hallways, where only the hum of the engines could be heard, the human sometimes sat alone with the box on his lap, his eyes watching the stars beyond the glass, his hands resting gently on the lid, as if waiting for the right time, as if knowing that one day he would open it before them all, and that day would change how they saw humans forever. The days on the ship passed like flowing rivers of time, engines humming through the endless dark, stars blinking outside the wide windows, and through every moment the human kept his small metal box close, never opening it before the crew, never explaining its secret. And with each day, the whispers around the ship grew louder, curiosity spreading like fire through dry grass. At first, it was small and playful, a guard leaning to his friend and asking if maybe the box was filled with nothing more than leaves, another laughing and saying maybe humans carried only water and air. But soon the jokes turned into wagers. The crew began to place bets in secret corners of the hall, one betting that it held fruit, another swearing it held grains, another convinced that it was not food at all but tools or weapons. And the game of guesses spread across the ship like a silent storm. The human noticed their stares. He saw the way their eyes returned again and again to the box whenever he walked into a room. Yet he never grew angry, never showed fear. He only smiled and carried on with his duties, his silence making the box more mysterious, his calmness making the crew even more restless, for every question unanswered becomes larger than itself. And the box now carried not only food but the weight of alien imagination. One evening in the mess hall, where the crew gathered for their routine meals, trays lined with protein gels and synthetic fibers. The human sat at the edge of the table with the box resting before him. He joined their laughter, nodded at their songs, yet again never touched the food they shared. The crew tried to eat as if nothing was strange, but their eyes betrayed them, drifting always toward the box, waiting for a single movement, a single sign that the mystery would end. An alien mechanic spoke up, his voice carrying across the hall. He said loudly that humans must live on nothing at all. Maybe they only breathed air and drank water. Maybe the box was empty. The others laughed, but uneasily, for deep inside none of them believed the box was empty. The weight with which the human carried it, the care with which he placed it beside him, the sound of metal locks clicking whenever he moved it, all these things told them there was something hidden. That night a group of younger crew members gathered in the sleeping quarters, whispering in the dim glow of the lamps. One said he had heard from his cousin that on another ship a human once carried a similar box. Inside was not food, but strange bones of animals no alien had ever seen. Another said perhaps inside were pictures of prey, reminders of hunts long past. Another shook her head and said no. The human carried his strength in the box, something that gave him the power to fight without fear. They argued softly until sleep overtook them, but even in dreams the box remained. The commander of the ship tried to keep order. He reminded his crew that their duty was to the mission, not to rumors. Yet he too could not escape the curiosity. He found himself watching the human in secret, watching how he guarded the box, how he never left it behind, how he even carried it into the training hall, leaving it by the wall as he sparred with the guards. And the commander wondered if perhaps the box was a weapon after all, disguised as food, something the human could unleash at any moment. But then came a night unlike the others, the corridors quiet with only the hum of the ship, most of the crew asleep in their chambers, when a pair of aliens walking back from their late shift passed by the recreation hall and froze in their tracks. Inside through the half-open door they saw the human seated alone, the box resting on his lap, his head bowed as though listening to it, his fingers tracing the lock slowly. They held their breath and waited, for in that moment it looked as though he might finally open it. The lock clicked softly, a sound so small yet echoing like thunder in their ears. The lid lifted only a little, and from within drifted a scent, faint but heavy, rich and deep, unlike anything they had ever smelled. It clung to the air, sharp yet strangely sweet. Their hearts pounded, their throats tightened, and just as quickly the human snapped the lid shut again, pressing it closed with steady hands, his eyes lifting to meet theirs in the doorway. He smiled faintly, not angry, not afraid, only calm. And then he walked past them with the box in his arms, leaving the hall behind. The two aliens stood frozen long after he was gone, unable to speak, unable to understand, for they had smelled something alive, something that did not belong to plants or grains. And though they said nothing, the rumor grew heavier the next day. For even silence speaks louder than words when fear is near, and the crew could see the change in the eyes of those who had witnessed the moment. By now the ship was filled with restless energy. Every conversation twisted back to the box. Every laugh carried an edge of fear. Even the younglings in the learning hall played games, pretending to be the human with his box. One would guard it fiercely while the others tried to steal it, and the one who guarded always won because the others grew too afraid to touch it. The story was no longer a small rumor. It was becoming legend, and legends grow teeth. The human seemed to know what was happening, yet he never changed his behavior. He still joined them in their tasks. He still helped with repairs, still laughed at their songs. But the box never left him, and the crew began to see him differently. Not as weak, not as fragile, but as something unknown, something powerful, something that carried secrets that could not be ignored. And in their minds, curiosity turned slowly into fear. Late one shift, the commander called his officers together, his voice low and stern. He told them that the crew was losing discipline, that the box was becoming more than it should. He demanded that no one disturb the human, that no one pry into his secrets. But even as he spoke, he felt the weight of doubt pressing on his own heart. He wanted to believe his own words. But deep inside, he too longed to know what was hidden inside the silent box. The voyage stretched onward, stars sliding past like silver rivers, time heavy and slow, and with every passing moment, the suspense grew thicker. The crew could no longer see the human without seeing the box. They could no longer speak of humans without speaking of what he carried. And soon it was no longer a question of whether the box would be opened. It was only a question of when. And somewhere in the silence of the star-filled night, the human sat alone again, his hands resting gently on the box, his eyes steady, his breath calm, as if he knew the moment was approaching, as if he knew that one day he would reveal the truth, and when that day came, the aliens would never see humans in the same way again. The tension inside the ship had grown like a living storm. The crew no longer laughed as freely. Their voices carried whispers heavier than before, and everywhere the human went, eyes followed the small box clutched at his side. The mystery was no longer just a rumor. It had become a question that demanded an answer, and the pressure of silence was pulling the crew apart. The commander watched his people grow restless, discipline breaking like thin glass. And though he had told them many times to ignore the human secrets, his words had no power against their burning curiosity. Even he could not silence the questions in his own mind, and each time he passed a human in the corridor, his gaze slipped unwillingly toward the locked box, wondering what truth rested within. One evening in the main hall where the crew gathered for a report, the commander spoke with a stern voice. He reminded them of their mission. He warned them against foolish distractions. But his speech was met not with respect, but with silence. Their eyes turned not toward him, but toward the human who sat calmly in the back with his box resting beside him, his hands folded, his face unreadable. And the commander felt a sharp edge of frustration pierce his pride. At last the commander called the human forward, his voice loud enough to silence even the soft whispers. He told them that the crew was unsettled, that the mystery of the box had become a burden. He demanded that the truth be shown, that the human open the box before them all, and at that moment the hall grew still, every eye watching, every breath held, as if the very air waited for the answer. The human lifted the box in his arms, his calm gaze sweeping across the crowd of aliens, his voice soft yet heavy with certainty as he spoke. He asked them if they were sure they wished to know. He told them that once the truth was revealed, they would never look at him the same way again. And for a heartbeat, no one spoke, their minds torn between fear and desire, between curiosity and dread. Some of the younger crew cried out that they wished to see, their voices eager and shaking. They claimed they had the right to know. Others stayed silent, their faces pale with hesitation, afraid of what might come. The commander straightened his shoulders and said with authority that the order was final. The box would be opened, the truth revealed, and his words left no room for escape. The human sighed softly as though carrying a great weight. He placed the box on the central table where the lights glowed brightest. The crew gathered in a circle around it, their eyes wide and unblinking, their hearts pounding in their chests. And the silence was so deep that the hum of the engines seemed like distant thunder. Then slowly, with deliberate care, the human reached for the lock. The metal clicked, a small sound that echoed like a roar in their minds. One alien flinched. Another gripped the edge of the table, every muscle tense. The human paused for a moment, looking at them with eyes both calm and ancient. Then he lifted the lid slowly, and as the box opened, a wave of heat drifted out into the room. At first there was only a faint scent, strange and heavy, drifting across the circle. The crew inhaled and their throats tightened. It was unlike anything they had smelled in centuries, sharp yet rich, strong yet inviting. And their bodies reacted before their minds, their pulses racing faster, their skin trembling. For deep within their blood lay memories of a time long past when their kind had hunted and fed on flesh before they turned away from such ways. And now that old instinct stirred. Again, one alien whispered in a trembling voice that it was flesh. Another hissed that it could not be. But the smell grew stronger as the box opened wider, steam rising in soft waves. And then they saw it. Inside rested pieces of meat cooked and prepared, glowing with heat and scent. Real flesh from a creature they did not know, tender and rich, the sight striking them with both horror and fascination. The hall filled with gasps and shouts. Some aliens recoiled in fear. Others leaned closer in disbelief, their eyes wide with hunger and terror both. for they had not seen meat in generations. Their species had abandoned it for peace and survival. They believed it gone forever. Yet here it was carried by the human as casually as a tool, as calmly as bread. And the truth struck them with force. Humans ate meat. The commander's voice broke the chaos, trembling with anger and unease. He asked the human why he hid such a thing, why he carried it in silence. The human looked at him and answered simply that meat was part of his people, part of their survival. He said it with no pride and no shame, only truth, and his calmness made the aliens shiver even more than the sight itself. The younger crew members whispered frantically, some claiming it was dangerous, others saying it was powerful, a few even admitting that the smell stirred hunger they thought forgotten. The older officers stood frozen, their discipline shattering, unable to look away from the box, unable to accept that the fragile creature they mocked carried the food of predators. The commander tried to speak again, to restore order, but his voice cracked under the weight of the moment, and for the first time he saw the human not as weak, not as fragile, but as something entirely different, a being who came from a world where survival demanded more than softness, a world where predators hunted and prey fled, and he realized that the rumor had been a shield for their pride, a lie they told themselves to believe that humans were harmless. The human lifted a piece of the meat, the steam rising around his hand, his eyes meeting theirs without fear. He asked once more if they wished him to continue, if they wished him to eat before them, and the hall trembled with silence. No one moved, no one breathed, their bodies frozen between disgust and fascination, between horror and respect, and in that silence the truth settled like iron chains. The moment had come. The challenge was complete, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence inside the grand hall was heavy as the alien stared at the human who now stood with quiet strength in the middle of the chamber. The lunchbox was still open, and the strange smell of cooked meat filled the air, drifting across rows of curious faces. Each alien reacted differently. Some leaned forward with hungry eyes, others leaned back with fear, as if the scent alone was dangerous, and a few whispered in low voices their translations, running through digital devices carried in their hands. The human who had shared his meal in the earlier gathering now stood taller than before, his shoulders straight, his gaze steady. He did not need to speak, for the truth of the meal had already spoken, yet the leaders demanded words they wanted to hear directly from the source. They wanted the human to explain the reason why humans would eat such food, why they would hunt creatures, why they would turn animals into meals, and why such a simple box of cooked flesh could carry so much hidden power. A tall alien with scales of blue and silver stepped forward, its voice sharp and clear, carried across the hall, as it said, "We were told humans survived only on plants, on fruit, on soft things that grow from soil. But what we see here is flesh of another life form. Explain yourself. Why do humans consume life in such a way?" The human raised his head slowly, his voice calm and steady as he answered, "Humans eat what they must to live. Sometimes it is fruit, sometimes it is grain, and sometimes it is meat. The world we came from forced us to adapt, and we learned to take strength from many sources." The hall murmured again, words of doubt, fear, and curiosity mixed together. The scaled alien hissed softly and leaned closer. "So you eat life to become strong, then how do you see yourselves? Are you hunters or are you beasts?" The human smiled faintly, though there was no humor in his expression. He said, "We are survivors, we are hunters. When we must be, we are gatherers. When we need to be, we are both, and more, we are human." The words carried through the hall heavy as iron, and the aliens shivered not from the temperature, but from the weight of the statement. The other leaders exchanged glances, some fearful, some calculating, some excited. The idea that humans could shift between roles, adapt to any need, and survive on almost anything was both a marvel and a threat to species that had grown comfortable in narrow ways of life. From the upper rows, a voice rang out, deep and low, filled with disbelief. "This is why you fight. As you do this is why you resist so fiercely. You are fueled by the lives of others. You take the strength of what you kill and make it part of your own. No wonder your kind has survived wars, storms, and starvation." The human answered with a quiet tone, "It is not cruelty, it is not joy, it is survival. It is the way of the wild on Earth, and we learn from it." At that moment, the aliens realized something deeper than food, something beyond meat or fruit. They saw that humans carried not only hunger, but also memory of struggle, memory of countless ages, where only those who adapted could continue. It was not just meat in the lunchbox, it was history. It was proof of evolution, of will, of survival against endless trials. The scaled alien narrowed its eyes and turned to the others, saying, "Do you understand what this means? This species is not weak. This species is not simple. If they eat both plant and flesh, they can live anywhere on rock worlds, on jungle moons, on barren stars. They can survive storms where we would fall. They can resist famine where we would starve." The words stirred unease and awe across the chamber. The aliens realized the lunchbox was more than food. It was a key to a truth. They had ignored a truth that changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The human then asked a question that silenced the hall. "Why do you fear our food so much?" The leaders shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, others whispered. Yet none spoke. The answer, the silence itself, was the answer. The fear was not of the meat, but of the meaning of the meat, the meaning that humans could thrive where others could not, the meaning that humans could claim power through resilience alone. Finally, an elder alien with eyes like molten gold spoke slowly. "We fear you. Because we do not understand you, we fear you. Because you are different, you break the rules that we thought were true. If a species can take strength from all sources, then what can stop them? What can limit them?" The human listened and nodded, then said nothing. His silence was stronger than any boast. Then the doors of the chamber opened with a heavy sound, and another human entered. This one carried a different lunchbox, smaller, but sealed tight. He walked with calm steps, and without a word placed the box beside the first one, then opened it slowly. The smell that escaped was sharper, richer cooked meat, seasoned with strange spices that spread like fire through the hall. The aliens could not hide their reactions. Some recoiled, some leaned forward as if tempted. Others clutched their coverings as though the scent itself might change them. The new human spoke simply, "This is not about hunger. This is about proof. We're not what you think. We're not bound to one way of living. We are bound only to survival." The chamber grew louder, voices overlapping in disbelief and fascination. Aliens of every kind realizing that this truth meant humans were not only dangerous, but unstoppable. For if one source of food failed, another would take its place. If one world denied them, another would welcome them. If one empire blocked them, another would fall before them. The scaled alien turned back to the first human and asked, "Then tell us, what do humans really eat?" The answer came like thunder: everything. The word struck the hall like a weapon, sharp and final. The aliens knew then that humanity could never be dismissed, never again treated as weak, for if they could eat everything, they could endure everything. And if they could endure everything, then one day they could rise above everyone. The murmurs rose higher, some filled with dread, some with awe, but all with certainty. The humans had changed the story. Forever the lunchbox was no longer just a container of food. It was the symbol of truth, the truth that humans were more than any rule, more than any expectation. They were the species that ate the world and carried it within themselves. The aliens whispered among themselves, and one thought echoed again and again: if humans eat everything, then what will they become? The humans stood in silence, letting the question hang, letting the fear and respect grow like a storm. He knew there was no need to answer, for time itself would provide the answer, and the galaxy would one day see. And with that, the hall fell into uneasy silence as every alien there realized that the day they learned what humans really eat was also the day they learned that nothing could ever stop them again. The alien station was silent after the strange lunchbox event, and the council tried to continue their studies, but deep inside their minds there was a growing unease, because what they had seen was not only food, but also a sign that humans carried something hidden and dangerous, and this secret was now burning in their thoughts, and they wanted to uncover more. The human called David walked through the large metal halls with his calm steps, and behind his calm face there was a storm of thoughts, because he knew the aliens would not leave the matter alone, and he could almost hear their whispers in the shadows and the soft hum of their strange machines that followed him wherever he moved. The council sent observers to watch his daily routine, and every moment was recorded and analyzed, because they wanted to see if his strange appetite was an accident or a clue to something greater, and they looked into his patterns with a hunger of their own. But it was not hunger for food, it was hunger for truth. At night, David sat in the guest chamber given to him, and he took out another small box from his bag, and inside it was dried meat wrapped in thin paper, and he placed it on the table with slow movements, as if he knew that unseen eyes were watching, and he whispered softly to himself about home about Earth, and about meals shared under the stars with family and friends, and though the words were quiet, the walls carried them away into the hidden ears of the station. The aliens gathered again in the council chamber with blue lights shining over their heads, and they replayed the recordings of David handling his food, and they argued in their strange voices about the meaning of this act, and some said humans eat meat only for ritual, and some said humans eat meat for strength, and some feared that humans eat meat for war. One elder alien with long silver skin raised his voice and said if humans eat living flesh, then they're more dangerous than we thought, because eating life is a mark of predators, and predators never stop until all around them is silent. And the others nodded in fear, because they all knew what predators could do. David felt the change in their behavior, the way guards walked closer, the way lights dimmed when he entered, and the way whispers followed his shadow. And he decided to take control of the situation. Instead of waiting for them to corner him with questions, he walked into the council chamber without invitation and stood in the center where the blue lights burned down on him like eyes from the heavens. He lifted the dried meat in his hand and said in a firm voice, "This is food for my world. It is simple, it is common, and it is part of us, and I will not hide it from you, because hiding it will make you fear more, and fearing it will make you imagine monsters where none exist." And the council froze in silence, because no visitor had ever spoken with such boldness. One alien asked with a trembling voice, "Do all humans eat like this?" And David answered, "Yes, we do. And it is not only food, it is history, it is survival, it is tradition, and it is memory of who we are and what we have faced." And the words echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling through mountains. The aliens began to picture Earth not as a weak green world of farmers, but as a planet where strong creatures roamed, and where humans hunted and ate and grew fierce through struggle, and the thought made them shiver with both fear and wonder. Outside the station windows, the endless stars burned like watchful eyes, and David stood calm, while the council whispered among themselves, trying to decide what to do. And though their voices were soft, David felt the weight of judgment pressing down on him like a heavy storm. The council finally spoke and declared that they needed to test the truth with their own eyes. They said, "We must see where humans come from, and how they live, for words are easy, but truth is in what we see." And David gave a slow nod, because he had known this day would come, and he knew that Earth itself would speak louder than anything he could say. For the next days, the station prepared a journey toward Earth, and during that time, the aliens watched David more closely than ever, and they recorded every breath and every meal he took, and they noted how he always ate with patience, and how he always treated food as if it had value beyond flesh and taste. And some aliens began to feel respect, while others felt greater fear. One young alien asked him in secret late at night, "Why do you eat life?" And David answered in simple words, "Because life gives life, and because to live is to take and to give, and that is the balance." And the young alien carried these words back to his people like a spark carried in dry grass. When the day of departure came, the great ship left the station, and David stood near the window, watching the stars pass in silence. And he thought about what the aliens would see when they reached his home, and he knew they would not only see meat, they would see the hunger that lived in every human heart, the hunger for survival, for growth, for discovery, and for more. As the ship moved faster, the aliens held many private meetings trying to prepare themselves for the unknown world that waited, and in those meetings fear mixed with curiosity until the two became one strange fire that pushed them forward. David closed his eyes and remembered hunting with his father in the forests of Earth, and he remembered the sound of fire cracking under a night sky, and he remembered the taste of roasted food shared with laughter and love, and he felt both pride and sorrow, because he knew the aliens would never understand fully, but they would see, and maybe seeing would change them forever. The ship neared the edge of human space, and alarms rang with soft tones to mark the approach, and the council members gathered in the main hall, with eyes wide and hearts heavy as they looked at the blue-green planet ahead, and they felt a strange pull as if the world itself was waiting for them with open jaws. David turned and looked at them with steady eyes, and said, "Now you will learn what humans really eat." And the words struck like a hammer in their minds, and the suspense grew in their chests like a storm waiting to break, and they knew the next step would decide everything. And so the ship descended slowly toward Earth with shadows crawling across the alien faces and silence filling the halls as each of them wondered what secrets waited on the ground below and whether humanity was a friend or a predator. The chamber was silent and filled with heavy air as the human named Daniel stood with his lunchbox still open for all alien eyes to see, and the smells of cooked meat lingered in the atmosphere, making the alien council twitch and tremble while the soldiers in the back looked uncertain of what would happen next. And the silence was not weak silence, but a silence that carried weight and suspense because this was no longer about a small meal or a hidden truth, but about something far greater and something that could change how the galaxy looked at humans forever, and the aliens knew this in their hearts, though they struggled to accept it. The council leader, who had remained calm in the earlier sessions, now shifted in his seat with visible discomfort, and he asked in a voice that was not as strong as before, "What does this mean, human? What are you showing us? Is this some kind of threat, or is it only a personal habit?" And Daniel stood steady and strong, and replied in clear words that cut through the tension like a blade, "This is not only my meal and not only my habit, this is what humans are, and what humans have always been. We are eaters of plants and eaters of meat. We are balanced, and we adapt, and we survive wherever we go, and we do not hide this truth any longer." The aliens gasped and whispered among themselves as the truth began to sink deeper, and one alien scientist who had studied many species stood and said, "We thought humans survived only by gathering fruits and vegetables. We thought you were weak without claws or fangs, and we thought you were a gentle race. But this meal tells us something different. It tells us you're something in between, something that is not fully predator and not fully prey. And perhaps that is why you're dangerous." And Daniel gave a slow nod, and he answered, "Yes, that is why we can live in deserts and forests and frozen lands. That is why we can face beasts larger than us and survive. Because we do not choose one path, we choose many, and that makes us strong." The soldiers in the back shifted uneasily because the thought of humans as predators was new to them, and they remembered the times they had mocked human soldiers for lacking sharp teeth or heavy armor, and now they wondered if they had been foolish to laugh, because the quiet strength of the humans standing before them made them realize that sometimes the most dangerous one is the one who does not show his weapons until the moment arrives. The chamber grew restless as council members began to argue, and some shouted that humans could no longer be trusted, while others said the discovery made humans more valuable as allies, and the debate turned into chaos, and the leader struck his staff against the ground to restore order, and then he asked the human to tell them everything, tell them the history of humans and their way of life, so they could decide with full truth in their hands. And Daniel agreed, and he began to speak of ancient times. On Earth, when humans were hunters with stone tools, when they learned to track animals and run for hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, and how they also learned to gather seeds and roots and grow crops in fields and keep animals for food, and how this dual way of survival shaped their minds and their spirit. The aliens listened, and they could see the story unfold like a painting before their eyes, and the idea that humans had survived against beasts larger and stronger than themselves without natural weapons, but with endurance and willpower, struck them with awe and fear, and some of them began to see humans as more than a simple species. They saw them as a force that could bend the balance of power in the galaxy. When Daniel finished his long tale, he closed his lunchbox and stepped back and said, "Now you know, and the decision is yours. Will you fear us, or will you stand with us? But whatever you choose, remember, the humans will not hide who they are anymore, and they will not pretend to be less than what they are." And the words echoed like thunder in the silent chamber, and not a single alien could speak for a long moment. Finally, the leader rose, and his face was heavy with thought, and he declared, "This truth cannot be ignored and cannot be erased. We have learned today what humans really eat, and more than that, we have learned what humans really are, and whether we call you friend or enemy, you will change the galaxy. And we must be ready." And his voice carried both respect and warning, and the council bowed their heads in agreement. Daniel felt the weight of the moment, but he stood proud because he had done what he came to do. He had revealed the truth, and no matter the outcome, he knew the galaxy would now see humans in a new light, and the hidden strength of his species was no longer hidden, and he felt the presence of history unfolding around him. The soldiers looked at him one last time, and in their eyes was no longer mockery, but a quiet recognition that this being before them was not weak and not simple, but something that could not be easily defined, and some of them felt fear, but others felt respect, and a few even felt admiration because they knew deep inside that a race that eats both flesh and plant, that survives in fire and ice, that adapts without complaint, is not a race to dismiss lightly. And so the meeting ended with tension still in the air and questions yet unanswered, but one truth remained carved in the minds of every alien who had witnessed it. The day had come when aliens learned what humans really eat, and they would never forget it, and never again would they look at humans with the same eyes as before, because the truth had changed everything, and the future now carried both danger and promise. As Daniel walked away from the council chamber, he carried with him not only his lunchbox, but the weight of his entire species, and he knew that the galaxy would watch humans with new eyes from this day forward. And he whispered quietly, though no one heard the words, "This is only the beginning." And with that, the doors closed behind him, and history moved into a new chapter.